We are. Yay!
It worked.
Oh, good.
By the magic of technology.
Thank you, StreamYard. Thank you, Facebook.
Yes, indeed.
Thank you, Lord.
We prayed to the gods of Mark Zuckerberg and StreamYard this morning to make sure that we were going to be able to go live and get on, which is fabulous. And we won't
quote any of Martin's rude remarks that he's making upstairs in the gods.
No, yeah, he's throwing cheap comments from the cheap seats upstairs.
Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah.
So today, we are excited to bring you a wonderful young man. He's an artist, a brand builder, a visionary of all kinds of things, but especially just good old fashioned rock and roll and truly Americana. I've really enjoyed my conversations working with this young man. He's out of Omaha, Nebraska. He is a singer, songwriter, bass player, musician. Easy ladies, hang on to your hats because he's
not exactly ugly.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
he's not fugly.
A little on the easy on the eye scale. So if you get the vapors, you'll know what happened. So without further ado, it is my pleasure. You'll see it scrolling across the bottom, and you can find his website. The crowd goes wild as we welcome Will Griffey from Omaha, Nebraska. Welcome, Will.
Hello, Will.
Hello. How's it going?
Oh, splendid.
It's going.
It's our first meeting, isn't it? I feel like I know you because Ruth has told me so much. And of course, I've Googled you. Yes. I mean, who wouldn't?
Indeed.
Yeah. So how is the weather treating you well in Nebraska?
Yes, it's beautiful. We are finally in the time of year where Nebraskans can look outside and actually go outside. So we're in good spirit. It's 80 degrees and sunny.
Oh, shut up.
That's beautiful.
It's not here.
That's beautiful. Well, we typically have folks on from all over. I don't know where Rick is today. Rick Lothers. Sammy is in Atlanta. She says hi, Will. And yeah, they'll trickle in slowly but surely. There's people hiding. There's more people on than comment. But Elizabeth is in New York, I believe, and she's our fearless promoter. She's the lady that made that wonderful Instagram story about you. So there you go.
Yeah, so, Elizabeth and I had a great conversation over Facebook Messenger a couple nights ago.
Good. Yeah,
excellent. Yeah. She's a great doll. She's one of our McCartney family dolls who just comes to TeaFlix and soaks up the vibe as we spill the tea, as it were.
Yes.
Indeed. Barbara's on from New Jersey. Dina Sheldon's on from Palm Rancho Mirage. So we're spreading the love today.
The gang's all here.
So Ange has been asking me all kinds of questions about you, and I said, save them for TeaFlix.
Okay, so I will begin. Are you sitting comfortably?
Indeed.
Jolly good. So first of all, how did you start all this? At what age did you become, interested in music and film and whatnot?
For sure, yeah. Very early age. My mother was a piano teacher and homeschooled us. And so I got introduced to piano lessons when I was 8 years old, essentially. And I didn't really start having the ability to write music until I was about, I would say, 13 or 14 years old is when I started actually putting songs together.
Starter.
Yeah, exactly right. But yeah, it was very early age.
Great.
So Angela, you guys have that in common. You were
I qualified as a teacher when I was 11 years old in Liverpool.
Piano teacher.
Piano teacher, yeah.
Yeah, she's...
When was that, 1748?
Martin said, when was that, 1748?
I heard.
The peanut gallery is busy today, I'll tell you what.
Sounds like
that's
it.
amazing. So were you brought up on like church music or your mom's music or a combination of all of the above? What were your early listening experiences?
Well, definitely the hymns were a very big part of it. We would actually go to the different nursing homes in the area and we would turn pages for the residents. So that was kind of that initial introduction, and we would sing the hymns and everything. And we were in choirs and whatnot. And a lot of the more, I guess, upbeat rock music introduction was more from the Christian artists at the time, because it was a very religious family that I grew up in. And a lot of the Christian music was what we were introduced to. So it wasn't really anything aggressive like I'm doing nowadays or some of that more alternative rock. But it laid the foundation for what I have now. And it allowed me to, I guess, learn how to write and think lyrically from a poetic side of things, I got a lot of that from the hymns.
Interesting. I was just dealing with a gentleman in Bath, Maine. He's going up for a Grammy this year, and he has written a series of, Peter Blackley, his name is, and he's written a series of songs based on his great-grandfather's hymnal poems.
Oh.
And so it's amazing how, you know, through generations and through how you're brought up, in your case, with the family and the church and everything, how that really continues to have an effect on you. But there was some great, I mean, I remember getting into, I listened to some music when we first moved here in the 80s, and I was like, this is good old fashioned four on the floor, kind of Bon Jovi-ish rock and roll.
Sure.
And then these acts were being touted as Christian rock and Christian artists. But I think that was a brilliant shift by, you know, the church's organization to get young people involved through the music into the movement. Quite clever.
Oh, absolutely. And I remember jumping into worship bands at the time, playing for youth groups and things like that. And that's kind of when I started playing the bass guitar and really starting to rock out a little bit. And yeah, you were doing it in a religious setting, but of course the style of music was starting to shift. It wasn't the slow melancholy stuff anymore. It was a lot more like, let's get amped up and get after it kind of style.
Yeah.
So it was
right. Well, I mean, it's just through osmosis, you were learning music, you were learning your craft. Yep. And then from there, with, you know, good intentions and a good heart and some faith, you take your own path, right?
Yep, exactly. And that was kind of the transition, right? Because when I started getting into more of the alternative side, it was you keep the core foundation of who you are, but you mature in your communication style. And I think a lot of music, you know, it's even right here behind me, where words fail, music speaks. And yeah, if you have the patience to learn about yourself and kind of keep that core structure and then input it into your songs, you don't even necessarily have to have exceptional lyrics. If your personality and your emotion is getting put into the actual sound that you're producing. There's just a lot of cool things about music that are keeping me alive and creative right now.
Yeah.
Well, and I also, you know, I'm married to a musician. Martin is just a freaking genius, and he is able to, you know, again, when we met, his first language is German, mine is English, but you see people all around the world. We just had the Eurovision Song Contest in Liverpool, which Americans don't know much about, but it's the second most watched broadcast in Europe behind the World Cup, believe it or not.
Oh, wow.
But music is truly a universal language. It's like mathematics. You know, it doesn't matter what your alphabet looks like. You know, you can see a string of numbers, you can see a sheet of music, or you can hear music. And even if the lyrics are not in your, you know, the vocals are not in your language, you still get that uplifting or interesting feeling from, you know, the ensemble that is the whole thing. So being a bass player, you know, we have one of those in the family.
Oh yes.
How did you gel as a rhythm section with drummers that you've played with and the drummer on your current project? Because that's a real fit, right? A drummer and a bass player.
Yeah, you have to speak the same language. If there's a disconnect in the rhythm section, if there is a disconnect between what the drummer and the bass player are trying to accomplish, it throws everything else off.
Yep.
And one of the most important elements is, okay, who's important where and who's supposed to be important when. And when I first started playing bass, I got super excited about doing all these like fun little bass runs and adding all the extra notes in and doing all that. And my brother's actually the reason that I kind of calmed down a little bit, because he's like, well, you're trying to do all this extra stuff. And at the time, Andrew, the drummer, he was doing a lot of like pop punk style. So a lot of fast kick drum, double kick, fat, you know, crazy snares, fills, and all the rest of it. And it's like the two of you are on different pages. You're doing cool things by yourselves, but there's no cohesive sound coming from it. We're too disjointed. So once I kind of figured out, oh, okay, the bass player is there to support a lot of what's going on, then there will be moments where you can shine. That was just literally just maturing as a musician. It's really what that was.
You don't necessarily need to be the Yngwie J. Malmsteen of the rhythm section, right?
Is it bad that I don't know what you just referenced?
Oh, Yngwie Malmsteen is
he's young, Ruth.
an incredible, and I'm going to get flack for this because I don't. I'll just say Scandinavian because I don't know which country.
I
think he's Swedish.
Yeah,
just an incredible guitar player, flying fingers and what have you. And we were in a session many moons ago with another amazing guitar player, not him, with our friend Nico Bolas, who's produced everyone literally from Steve Perry and Don Henley to Frank Sinatra. Yeah, I know and this name. Guy was shredding away. And Nico leans forward and puts his hand on the talkback button. He's like, dude, you're not getting paid by the note.
Oh, wow. Oh, wow. Yeah.
Relax. Slow down.
Relax. Yeah. And here's the thing. Musicians, we are so they come in all shapes and sizes and personalities. I think some of the best studio musicians are the session players. Those are the ones with very low, they have a lot of humility, right?
Yeah, right.
And
absolutely,
they put the song first as opposed to them just showing off.
Well, remember we had Denny Tedesco on?
Oh, yes.
Recently?
Yeah. Well, Denny has, he's produced a couple of movies, hasn't he?
Right. So the first one, The Wrecking Crew.
The Wrecking Crew.
Which is the old original session musicians from the 60s. His father, Tommy Tedesco, was the guitar player on probably 1,000 albums. Carol Kay was the bass player. She was the first woman ever. Check it out if you or the audience haven't checked it out. It's called the Wrecking Crew. And then his new one, which is premiering on the big screen at the Chinese Theater in Hollywood this month, end of the month, is called The Immediate Family. Okay. And that is Lee Sklar, the bass player. They have a brand new band on Quarter Valley Records, which is it's kind of classic rock. It's Edgar Winter's label, who was my client. So it's Leland Sklar, Danny Korchmar, guitar player, Russell Kunkel on drums, Steve Postel is the vocalist, and who am I missing? Martz? That's it, right? It's a 4-piece. Anyway, it's called The Immediate Family, and they're just.
Waddy.
Oh my God, Waddy Wachtel. Hello. Who can forget Waddy? Earth to Waddy, Earth to Ruth.
Tell them the story about the sax solo on Perry.
Oh yeah, so Waddy Wachtel is an incredible guitar player, and he played on Steve Perry's Sherry, right? And Nico was producing. I got the story. I got it. The old timers
back in your cage.
The old timers hasn't set in just yet. And so Waddy was called in by Nico and I think Greg Ladani, the late great Greg Ladani, came into Record One and he played rhythm on it. And then he's like, okay, so that big gap in the middle 8 there, do you want me to shred, lay the guitar solo on that before lunch or after lunch? And Nico said, oh no, he said, Steve Perry's planning on putting a sax on there. And he's like, the hell he's gonna. Not while Waddy's in the house. It's that famous in the middle of Oh Sherry. I know. We could have been suffering through an 80s sax solo if Waddy hadn't put his foot down.
And that's part of it too. Like, I'm glad you told that story because I think about the times that I'm in the studio and the conversations we have about what are we going to put here? What are we going to do in this section of a song? And I'm lucky because everybody I've worked with so far, it's been a collective conversation around, okay, what fits the song best? Let's serve the song. Let's make sure the song is best, not showing off in any way.
Maybe they're just scared of you.
No, I don't think that's it. I think when I'm in the studio, I listen closely to the people I'm working with because I do so many demos that by the time I get to the studio, there's this thing called demoitis that an artist can get where you think you've got the best thing going and you get into the studio and you get somebody else's ears on it and they're sitting there scratching their head being like, well, where's the hook? And then you're like, well, it's right here. Well, that's not a hook. Like, oh, well, what about this cool guitar lick? It's not really doing it for me. You start having that conversation. If you don't have the proper humility, you might storm off and walk out and say, no, you're wrong. But if somebody gives me that feedback, I listen because I want the song to be the best it can be.
Good boy. Yeah.
Well, listening is one of the most important things you could ever do in your life, let alone your career. I mean, what was it? There's a great saying, I'm paraphrasing, but it's like nobody ever learned anything while their lips were moving.
That's right. Exactly.
Amen to that. I definitely learn a lot more when I shut up.
Yes.
Which is why I enjoy our conversations. So for the audience, we've been lucky enough to be chosen to work with Will and his brand The Years Since, which we'll get into in a few minutes. Just going through the whole, who is Will? What is the band? What is the project? What's your ultimate goal? It's sort of like a verbal vision board, right? That we do on our sessions.
Yeah, it really is. I think, if we were to really get to the nitty gritty of it, like what am I trying to accomplish? Right. I have this whole catalog of music inside of me that I'm finally able to put and print into a WAV file that I can put out into the world for other people to listen to. And my intention is these stories that I've collected in my life, mostly from other people's perspectives, because most of the stuff I write, it's not really personal to me in the sense that I experienced it. It's stuff that I witnessed and heard from others. And I said, oh, that's kind of an interesting story. And my intention is I just want that music to get out there because I think there's a gap right now in music where a lot of the stuff that we have now is very party driven, beats that people want to dance to and things like that. But it's a little bit harder to find music that has an honest story to tell about the human experience. That's something that I'm trying to really get out there, is express the human experience and how we get through it. And 99% of the time, there's hope in my song. I very rarely will just write a song that's all about depressing, sad subject matter. That's true in life that we have those situations, but I want there to be hope interweaved into the song so that a person doesn't stop listening to it and now they're just sad. You know, I want there to be hope. So there's that side for the music. I'll let you throw a follow-up in here.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think there are enough things to bum us out. You can open your mail and your bills every day. We don't need any more music that's about, the end of the world and heartbreak and all of that stuff. So that's why I enjoy working with you on the sort of the think tank side of things. Is because I always come away from our therapy session, music therapy sessions, if you will. I think we learn from each other, right? Because I'm an old fart and you're a young buck just getting started out. So I've got experiences in places that you don't necessarily, just simply because of your age. But I'm always uplifted by your commitment, not just to hope and craft and music and dedication or whatever, but your absolute love for this country and what's right. And I'm not talking of politics. I'm not talking Americana in quotes, but you seem to, you have a backbone, you have a spine. You're a young man that's obviously been brought up by good folks and, influenced by your, no, it truly is. And I really, really enjoy working with you. And I encourage everybody to go to theyearssince.com. So since we touched on that, what is, Angie's been asking me, what
inspired you to start this particular project?
Where's the name and where does the name come from?
Yeah, great question. The name, The Years Since, I got the idea after taking a 6-year hiatus from writing music and utilizing that creative spirit, utilizing that talent. I took 6 years off from it because I was doing a labor job and I didn't have the energy physically or mentally to pour into my artistry. And when about end of 2019, early 2020, I left that job and got a new job. And I finally had this refreshing freedom where I actually had the mental capacity to focus in on music again. And when I started thinking about a project name, I didn't want to use any of the old projects that I had. I had a band called Midlife Boy back in the day. And I was like, that's too immature at this point. And there's already a Fallout Boy. So I'm not going to copy from that. Right. And it had been a long time since I'd written anything. And I looked at my catalog of songs I had written that I wanted to re-release. And I thought, it's been a lot of years since I've written. It's been a lot of years since I started all this stuff. So then the years since I started, the years since I was born, the years since I had my first job, that's kind of where this came from. So it's kind of like a time capsule almost idea. And I think to really simplify it, I think a lot of people's lives, we are a collective of our experiences. And it's good to look back and reminisce a little bit, but there's a reason that the windshield is bigger than the rear view mirror. And
I like that.
You know, if you have the ability to recognize the past, but stay focused on the future, and utilize your talent to move forward, then that's kind of where the passion behind this project is. So yeah, just to finalize that, the reinvigoration came from a new outlook on life, and I got revitalized, got back in touch with some of my old musician friends, and here we are.
It's fantastic.
That's wonderful.
And we have our mutual friend and musical PR genius, Melissa Kusirik from Moxie PR to thank for our association. Melissa's a powerhouse. She's a sister from another mister up there in Omaha. And she's fat. And she said, you know, I know this local young musician, and I think he just needs a bit of sort of steering and guidance, which is why when Will told me that story about the years since, we worked with our art department kids and then chose Louise, who's done an amazing job on iterations of the logo. But if you go to the website, you will see an old-fashioned clock, which represents the time capsule. And we went through the whole agency iteration of, you know, color palettes and fonts and this, and that, and the other. But again, speaking to your dedication to this whole thing, when you came up with the years since, what do you envisage from, you know, now to 3 years to 5 years to 10 years with the brand and the logo and the imagery, and tell folks what that represents to you, and what, you know, what you are trying to connect with them on a touchy-feely level with the brand?
Yeah. So with all of that, I really want, with each song that I write, I want to take some kind of lyric from each song that will speak to somebody. You know, each song is going to have the hook in terms of the melody, but what's a lyric in each one of my songs that can kind of be a standalone, empowering, hope-driven statement? And, you know, I care a great deal about when a human being looks back on their life or looks where their life is at now, can they introduce anything into their current existence that gives them that extra spark and that little drive to keep pushing forward? So my whole brand concept is, what can I do to add a little smile in somebody's day? What can I do from a product standpoint? Maybe it's a pillow with the words, you know, let me show you what I'm made of, or whatever it would be, where they look at that every day, and that's a part of their environment. I think we're a product of our environment. So whatever development happens from a product standpoint and a music standpoint, my focus is way more on the little daily impacts I can make on a human's life versus being a rock star on a stage.
Wow.
Interesting. People are freaking out in the comments about the windshield is bigger than the rear view mirror. I think that needs to be our next round of t-shirts.
That would be good. Yeah, we'll have to figure out something for that. I don't know where I got that from.
Yeah, no, I can. We can make a design, and Vision Merch can definitely make t-shirts for folks. I would wear one of those.
So would I, if they make them big enough.
We'll get a triple XL petite, friend.
Well, I got to say this too, and I think it's kind of interesting that this relationship has developed the way it has, because when I was young, I always, and I've told you this, but I always would sit with the more seasoned members of our family and listen in on conversations, as opposed to
nice way of saying old people.
I've had some practice with this statement many times. I figured out a nice way to say it, right?
Yeah.
More experience. Yeah. So I would sit with them, but now I think with this music project, I want to reduce the gap between generations a little bit. And it's okay to be young and excited about life and just go after the things that you want. But there's a lot to be learned.
It's also okay to be old. Yeah.
Right.
Exactly. It's good, and it's good for young people to slow down and listen a little bit to folks that have more experience, because you're gonna simplify your life a little bit, I think.
Well, yeah, I agree. And I think that in Western cultures, we're all about, the almighty dollar and everybody's working for the weekend, right?
And you've got to be slim, and you've got to be
gorgeous, and
we're none of those.
A certain age. But I think that, again, since the pandemic and we were all brought indoors and we were all forced to think and stew in our own juice for 2.5 years, we can learn something, from that, and B, a lot of the Asian cultures, they revere their elderly folks. Their old people are like, they are the seat of wisdom. So I think it's very forward thinking of you, literally in the heartland of America, in Omaha, Nebraska, to be looking to past generations to make a connection. In fact, when we did Angie's, one of Angie's tomes, books, she keeps writing books. Hello. I can't even remember. I think it was the second or third one. We came up with this crazy idea of smart book technology. We put, for every chapter of every place, we put a QR code in the book that linked to a different YouTube video, a different page, so that grandparents could sit on the sofa with their grandkids, and they could both share this experience of, reading a book. Well, Granddad, who was Ed Sullivan? Who were the Beatles? Well, grab your Samsung, grab your iPhone, Lisa, and scan this. And then now there's a connection between those things. Because I think, you're right. We've lost a lot of that when just the pursuit of the almighty dollar and happiness and being on the treadmill.
Ratings.
Exactly.
Do you think it's ironic that when you I would guess if you were to type in famous influencers 2023, I wonder what the percentage is between somebody that's in their early 20s to early 30s versus somebody who is in their 60s to 80s would be. And I would guess that it's on the younger side.
Oh, very much.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
And that's amazing to me, because I'm thinking I would rather be inspired or taught by somebody who has more life experience. That makes way more sense to me.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's why, I listen to the people I do, and that when I get introduced to somebody like you, Ruth, and to you, Angie, I cherish that relationship, because there's so much life that you guys have experienced that you can share with me, that I can start taking some pieces and say, okay, how could that apply to my life? And I'd rather get that from somebody like you guys, as opposed to somebody who's in the exact same spot that I am in life.
Well, no, that's great. And I have to tell the audience, and it's Angie and Will's first official meeting today. She's sort of waved from behind Zooms and stuff. Yeah. But he was thoughtful enough on Mother's Day to send me a text and say, please tell Angie, wishing her a very happy and healthy Mother's Day. But we need more, thoughtfulness costs nothing, does it?
It's free. And I think too, like to your point about the speed at which we live, time prioritization is something that we all probably struggle with. When somebody says I didn't have time to do that, it really means I didn't prioritize my time so that I could do that.
Yeah, there's that.
Yeah, right. Can't be asked, as we say in Liverpool.
Can't be asked.
Can't be asked. Can't be bothered. I think that this, once the world gets to feel the years since and the sort of the egg timer that it represents to me, it's, people, when you walk into a lawyer's office, you're like, oh, how long is this going to take? How much is it going to cost? Right? Because you're on the clock. But there are also times in life where you should just put the egg timer sideways. Don't count the time. Just literally, switch off and be in the moment and in the moments that allow that to come, right?
Absolutely. Listen to the full album again. We live in a day and age of, put out a single and people listen to it for 3 days and then it's gone down the rabbit hole. Yeah. But it's okay to listen to a full album and really experience the artist for what they are from start to finish.
Right.
And that just takes time and patience, right? To just hit play and just sit in it instead of just next.
Well, and I think, speaking to what we've been talking about, I think the listening experience has been reduced for the most part to these horrible white plastic and MP3s. I'm so glad that vinyl is coming back, or has made a comeback. I'm so glad that audiophiles are now buying speakers, you know, taller than grandma and sitting in a couch with a nice glass of something, listening to a whole album. I mean, just, you know, when I was a kid and growing up, you bought the album and you slit the plastic cover open, and just the smell of the printed poster inside, or the booklet, or in the, you know, that was all by the damn labels, just reduced to convenience. You know, can we get it smaller? Can we pack more in a truck? Can we make it cheaper to ship? Oh, I know, cassettes. You get more of those in a 5-ton truck for the same amount of petrol, gasoline, and then CDs. And now it's digital. It's like, good grief. You know, the amount.
Well, think about it this way, from a nostalgic side. You know, there are songs that I will go back to and listen to, and when I push play, I can smell the pine forest of Pennsylvania because I listened to that song every time I went on vacation up there. You know, our senses are made alive by have an experience. Our senses take it in, and then we relate those things to that experience more and more, and that's what allows a song. So for example, the reason I bring this up is that my favorite Beatles song is Blackbird.
Oh, well, you know, do you know who that was written for?
I have no idea.
My mother.
Really?
The story goes differently, but when Mum was, she was in her late 80s and she'd been ill, and she came to stay with Jim and I, and Paul came home in the middle of the night one night, and, you know, he'd driven from London up to Merseyside where we lived. And he wanted to talk to somebody, and we were all fast asleep. And he went to the little back bedroom where my mum was, tapped on the door, and he said, "Are you awake, Edie?" And she said, "Well, I am now." So he went in, and he just wanted somebody to unwind with and talk to.
Sure.
And he chit-chatted with her about how she slept. And she said, "Well, sometimes, except for that flaming bird that wakens me up." He said, "What bird?" And she told him all about the blackbird that would come and sit on the top of Jim's greenhouse every night, shortly after midnight usually, and sing. And Paul was intrigued by this story, so he went downstairs and got his brother Mike's, I think it was a Grundig tape recorder, one of those big green reel-to-reel ugly things, sat on the end of the bed, opened the window and listened, and sure enough, right on cue, the blackbird started to sing, so he taped it. Now, I'm not saying that bird singing is the one which is on the record, but I do have a cassette in my safe of Paul in the studio saying, "This next one's for Edie."
Dedicated to Edie. And the day he did the demo, he did it over and over again, because you can even hear his foot tapping on the original recording. Every time he sang it, it said, "This one's dedicated to Edie." It's actually not in the safe anymore. I took it to the bank and put it in the safety deposit box.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, in case there's a California fire.
Yeah.
What a cool story. Thanks for sharing that, because my introduction to that song was actually a cover by Colin Ray, a country artist. And when I heard that, it was when we were traveling up to Pennsylvania. So I always related that song to the smell of pine forest and everything like that.
Yeah.
And the other reason I bring that up is my generation, a lot of the introduction we get to some of the older artists, we hear the covers by other bands. And so I've had moments where I've listened to an artist that's around nowadays doing a cover of a song that was written in the 50s, 60s, or 70s. And I'd never heard the original. And I might be like, "Oh, this is just a new song by this band."
Sure.
And that can happen a lot looking through stuff like, the song Hallelujah. Not a lot of people know it's Leonard Cohen from Canada.
I was just going to say Leonard Cohen. Yeah.
Like my favorite version of that song is by, I wrote it down so I didn't forget, but Jeff Buckley's version. It's also like 6.5 minutes long. And then there's a lot of other covers after the fact. So we are connected by, generation after generation to all these songs. It's just, I don't always know if we take enough time to understand where it actually all started.
Probably
right. There's a funny family story from our cousins in Australia when in the 70s, when Paul and Linda formed Wings with Denny Lane, Denny Sywell, Jimmy McCulloch, Henry McCulloch. They were out touring in Australia before they did the American tour, I believe. And the cousins in Brisbane all got, you know, invites to go and tickets and what have you. So my youngest cousin then, how old would she be? Probably, I don't know, 10 or 12 or something. 12, and my cousin Bob Butchard said, hey, come on, family, you know, we've got tickets. We're going to go and see cousin Paul McCartney and Wings tonight. And they said, well, Wings, what's that? Oh, it's a brand new band. Well, you know, but Paul McCartney. And she's like, no, you know, I don't know. And he's like, from the Beatles. And she's like, he was in a band before Wings. He was in a band before Wings. Now that story has traveled around the world, but it was actually a true story that my cousin Kaylee didn't know. There was a band before Wings. So, yeah, yeah. Well, you know, it all depends on where you are and how old you are and what your exposure to pop culture was.
That's right. Well, Ruth did a talk at a school in Culver City. It's called Art and the Beatles. They decided they wanted some input from the kids, you know, to make a CD cover, and that Ruth should come and do a slideshow and fill them in. So you take over.
So, well, yeah, they really kind of, the teacher was my age and she thought, oh, these kids will be thrilled to, you know, Art and the Beatles, and there's McCartney coming in. And we played Yellow Submarine and Strawberry Fields, and we gave them a bunch of crayons. I think they're about 6, 7, 8 years old, and said, you know, go ahead and make your own album covers. And they were great. They were really well done. But one little kid put his hand up and said, I was prepping for this class and I didn't know anything about the Beatles. And, you know, my dad told me all who they were. But my question was, John Lennon, was he murdered or was he assassinated?
Oh,
what a question
for a really young child.
But when they went back and researched the Beatles, that was the horrible, you know, loss of John was the story that surfaced first. Through the search engines, not all of their wonderful accomplishments. So to your point, there's enough death and destruction out there. We just, you know, we need uplifting hope and more positive stuff, right?
Amen. Amen. And that's what I'm doing with this new release too. Like the new song that I have coming out. I actually wrote it when I was 18 or 19 years old. And I got lucky because by the time I was ready to actually record it for real in my mature musician years, the lyrics of the song still held some maturity. So I didn't have to do a ton of rewriting. I did find out that the main hook in the song was borrowing from a Disney princess's song. I can't remember what her name was. Not Disney princess, but one of the Disney kids, either Tinsdale or Britney Spears. But they had a song called This Is What Dreams Are Made Of. And I think that line also comes from a Van Halen tune. Oh, that's what dreams are made of. And I can't remember what the...
okay. Yeah.
Maybe, it might have been in Top Gun. But anyway, so I had to rewrite that hook. And with Jasmine's help, she was like, well, what if you change it this way? What if you change it that way? And that's when we came up with Let Me Show You What I'm Made Of.
Yep.
And so now that's the first t-shirt that I'm putting out to promote that song. The words "Let Me Show You What I'm Made Of" are on it, and we're doing it for the 4th of July Independence Day timeframe. And we branded it from a patriotic standpoint because I think there are a lot of people that want to show the world what they're made of. They have that inkling inside of them of, okay, we've been shut in place for maybe 2.5 years, but I have a lot to offer to this world. Let me show you what I'm made of. And that can look a lot different for everybody. And it doesn't just have to be from an American patriotic standpoint, but it just makes sense for a summer banger to have that theme.
No, absolutely. Hey, you know, it could be for line cooks, dishwashers, chefs, you know, anybody. Yeah, it's all good stuff. So theyearssince.com is up and running. You had another question, Andrew?
Yes, I was going to ask you about merch. We'd like to be able to tell folks where they can go to find out about your merch.
Absolutely. It's very simple. We kept it simple. Great partnership with Manic Merch. Vision Merch is the website. And what we're doing is you just go to theyearssince.com. Right at the top of the page, you'll see a button that says merch. You click on it and you're off and running. It's very simple.
Okay.
I also put a picture of the shirts on the website, and that's also linked, so you can click on that. It'll take you right there.
Oh,
too.
great. Yeah.
And the new single, Holding the Match. Tell us about that. And where that idea.
Yeah, the song Holding the Match, you know, it's like I just said, the lyric is "Let me show you what I'm made of" in the chorus. That song is a true it's a love song, but it's not melancholy. It's a pop punk rock and roll tune. And I wrote it from the perspective of a young man saying, hey, young woman, let me take your hand. Let me fight for you. Let's do life together. I'm going to show you that, you know, my passion for you goes beyond some of the more base instincts of humankind. And we're going to live life together, and this is going to be awesome. So that's a simple way of explaining it.
Yeah. It's to me, when I listen to it, it's kind of like it's swashbuckling rock and roll. It's like if Errol Flynn would have made a record, right?
That's a great description. I've heard the name. I've heard the name. Like, why would I know that name?
Oh my gosh. Okay.
If you were my age, you would.
Yeah.
Well, he was the George Clooney of his day.
He was indeed. He was the George Clooney of his day. He was the matinee idol of the 40s and 50s.
Yeah,
got it. Okay.
But I was just thinking maybe swashbuckling rock and roll should become a new category.
Yes,
Grammys.
Indeed, a new chart.
Yeah,
let's start a new chart, and then you'd be number 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5.
Let's do it. Let's just pave our own way instead of always trying to copy what everybody else is doing. Just make your own road.
Blaze a new trail.
That's absolutely right. Well, thank you for taking the time out. I know you have another adventure coming up shortly at the studio, so we won't keep you too much longer. But thank you once again for being a part of the McCartney Multimedia family and letting us, work with you and help you along your path. It's a real honor to work with you. And the kids, everybody watching, should go to theyearssince.com and learn more about this incredible young man and his talent and his vision and all those good things.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much, everybody.
All right. We'll see you soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.